This man's name is Will Davis. That afternoon, Will was eating at a restaurant with his parents, and at the same time wanted to introduce his girlfriend named Jillian Stewart. After introducing herself, Jillian said that she had just been accepted to work at a big company. Hearing that, Will's parents were happy. Will's father reminded Will to follow Jillian's example in finding a better job, because Will was still working as an intern editor, whose salary was only enough to pay his internet bill. Even though he was grown up, all this time Dad still had to continue giving him monthly money. Before parting, Dad gave him the monthly money while saying, "This is the last money. From now on, Will has to earn his own money." The next morning at the rented house, Jillian was surprised to see Will buying a new TV. Will proudly said, he bought the TV with his last pocket money. "Don't worry about food later, he'll just ask his dad again." Yesterday, Dad must have been joking. Hearing that, Jillian was shocked and couldn't believe Will's attitude. In the rented house, they live with Will's 3 friends so they can chip in for the bills. His 3 friends are Ethan, a programmer, Luke, who is still unemployed, and Charlie, an elementary school teacher whose hobby is getting drunk. That afternoon at work, his boss tells Will that he has been fired. The company is currently on the verge of bankruptcy, so he is forced to fire all his interns. At night, after searching for vacancies on the internet, Will finally got a new job as a motel guard. That night, he went straight to work. Everything went smoothly. In the middle of the night, while on guard, a male guest booked a motel room. Will didn't suspect anything at all. But in the morning, the police suddenly came to arrest the man. It turned out that last night, the boy had rented a room for an illegal business. As a result of that incident, Will was fired again. A few weeks later, after his money ran out, Will found his father to ask for more money. Unfortunately, his father didn't have any money because he had just been fired yesterday. Let alone for Will, he was confused about how to support his mother next month. At night, Luke invited his friends to a party at a bar. Luke had just been hired. While his 3 friends were partying, Will just ate. The next afternoon at the clothes shop, Will confided in Jillian. He really wanted to borrow money from the bank to open an advertising service business. Hearing her boyfriend's plan, Jillian was angry. It wasn't that she didn't want to support him, but not now. Will would rather find a job first so that his finances would be stable. They both argued. Jillian then threatened that if he still insisted on starting a business, they would break up. Finally, Will gave in. He promised that he would look for another job tomorrow. Meanwhile, at the cafe, when Dad was ordering coffee, Mom called. Because he hadn't told her that he had been fired, Dad said that he was busy with work right now. On the other hand, Charlie was seen teaching at school. In the middle of class, a teacher came and offered Charlie if he wanted to move from being a chemistry teacher to a gym teacher. If he did, his salary would be increased by $100 per week. Without further ado, Charlie immediately agreed. 2 days later, Will got an interview call at a big company. However, throughout the interview, he was busy playing with his cell phone. At first, he wanted to be kicked out, but when Will showed him the video advertisement he had edited, the HRD was amazed. The next day, because he really had no money, Will was forced to sell the TV. However, just as the TV was brought, Will got news that he had been accepted to work as a video editor with a salary of $26,000 per month. Will was so happy, he immediately chased after the TV buyer and asked for it to be returned. A week after working for the first time, Will was told to attend a meeting with the company's top brass. Instead of wearing a formal suit, he relaxed and wore casual clothes. When he showed the results of his video edits, Will was scolded by the deputy director named Catherine. Catherine gave him a guidebook for making advertisements while telling him to follow the rules in the book, not to edit carelessly. The way of dressing must also be neat according to the rules in the book. If next month there is no change, then he will be fired. Will obeyed. During lunch, Will met his father at a cafe so that his mother would not be suspicious. Every day, Dad hangs out at a cafe pretending to work. Will is there to vent about Catherine's nagging. Instead of encouraging him, Dad supports Catherine. And he said, "Don't be like a child, that's always been the office rule. You have to be neat rather than complaining. It's better to be grateful to be able to work." Meanwhile, Dad has been unemployed for more than a month. Dad even dyed his hair and beard to look younger, because every job interview he was always rejected because he looked old. Will, who was offended, left there. On the other hand, at Luke's office, on his first day of work, suddenly his boss came and told Luke to drink a super bitter herbal drink. He had to drink it now, in front of all the employees. This was a new kid's ritual.
Deer come?
Deer come! Deer come!
Oh, I think it's coming back.
Awesome!
That night, Will went to Jillian's apartment. Since working, Jillian decided to move and live alone in an apartment near the office. Again, Will complained about Catherine's nagging. As a girlfriend, Jillian encouraged him, but she also advised him, "Appearance at work is important. Before, we were free because we were just freelancers. But after work, we stayed in the office. She had to follow the office rules. It's okay to wear whatever clothes you want at home, but when you're at the office, you have to be neat so that other people will respect you." Hearing Jillian's gentle explanation, Will began to understand. Slowly, he began to want to change his appearance. Will began to pay attention to the way he dressed, making sure that he looked neat and professional at the office. He also began to understand the importance of following the rules and standards set by the company, so that he could be more respected by his colleagues and superiors. A month passed. One afternoon, Will invited Dad to eat. When he was about to pay for the first time, he treated Dad. During the meal, Dad was amazed to see Will's neat changes. Now his son had become a person. Will apologized for never listening to his father's advice. After apologizing, Will invited Dad to go to his office. It turned out that he planned to make a job application video for Dad. In the middle of the recording, Dad got nervous and asked to stop. Dad then complained about his life that had fallen apart since being fired without reason. Even though Dad had always been an exemplary employee, loyal, and truly loved the company, he was very disappointed. If only he had been given the chance, even though he wanted to advance the company. While listening, Will secretly recorded his father. On the other hand, Ethan was seen tracking a company boss to the toilet using a new application he had made. In the toilet, Ethan suddenly barged in and immediately explained his application. Different from other tracking applications, his application was really accurate. He could even track the boss who was taking a piss. After negotiations, the boss agreed to buy Ethan's application. The next day at the office, Catherine praised Will's increasingly good work. Catherine reported that the director would retire soon and she would be promoted to replace the director. While teasing, Catherine said that if Will could maintain his good work, then she would promote Will to deputy director. That night, while working overtime because he hadn't taken a break, Will, who was exhausted, accidentally uploaded a video advertisement that he had made to YouTube. In the middle of the night, Ethan suddenly informed him that he had watched the video that Will uploaded a few hours ago. Now the video is trending on YouTube. When checked, Will screamed happily, since going viral. The next night, Will was invited by a businessman named Lon. Lon wanted to invite Will to join as an advertiser in his company. Not work, but cooperation. Because his business was still starting, Lon could only offer a profit sharing of 20%. Although it was small, Will was very interested. Moreover, in this company, he could freely make videos as he pleased without any rules. That night, Will went to Jillian's apartment to tell her about Lon's offer. Just arrived, it turned out that Jillian was crying in the corner. When asked, Jill said that she had just been fired, even though she already had a plan to invite Will to chip in to pay for a house for their future. Hearing that, Will fell silent. Since Will was the only one with money now, he didn't tell her about Lon's offer. Instead, Will told her that he would be promoted soon. Until got a new job, it would be better for Jillian to go back to living in a rented house with her friends for the time being. Jillian complied. The next day, Dad confided in the cafe waitress. Why hasn't he received an interview call even though he's applied to many companies? Because he was very frustrated, Dad said. Today, he's going to go to one of the companies and will barge in, forcing his way to meet with HR. At the office, when Will saw his father's Twitter post about doing something reckless, he immediately called Luke to ask him to deliver it right away. Before leaving, Will brought Dad's newly edited job application video. A few minutes later, Luke, Ethan, and Charlie came to pick him up. Arriving at the company building, they saw Dad being chased out by the security guard for barging in. Will, who was embarrassed, apologized and asked Dad to go home. But just as he was about to leave, HR passed by. Dad asked Will for help. "Just this once, please help me in." Will and his friends helped. After successfully entering in the elevator, Dad tried to introduce himself to HR. Dad also gave Will a CD while saying that he wanted to apply for a job. The CD contained a video of his job application, edited by his own son. Although he didn't know what the video contained, he was sure that his son's edits would be good. HR was touched and invited Dad to have an interview. Not long after, when he came out, Dad approached Will and his 3 friends who were tied up. Dad told him that he could start work tomorrow. Hearing that, Will and his 3 friends cheered happily. After the business was finished, Will returned to the office. There, he was surprised that so many employees had been fired. When he met Catherine, Catherine told him that today she had officially been promoted to director. As the new director, without mercy, Catherine immediately fired all the employees who did bad work. Catherine then gave Will a new work contract, while saying that Will was now officially her deputy and his salary would double. Hearing the news, Will was happy even though he didn't like having to always be ordered around by Catherine. But for the sake of his lover, he would try even harder. That night, after returning to the rented house, Jillian complained, "He can't stand living here, it's so messy." Will tried to calm her down. Later, when he gets a bonus, he'll buy a small apartment for the two of them to live in. A few days later, Will invited Jillian to attend a Christmas party at his office. When she met Catherine, Jillian saw that Will was trying to be polite, even though he was uncomfortable. At that moment, Jillian finally realized that her lover had been tortured all this time, but chose to stay for Jillian's sake. When Catherine left, Jillian apologized. Suddenly, Jill tore up Will's new work contract and said, "If Will wants to open his own advertising company, then she will support him 100%. Will was happy. He immediately met Catherine and poured out all his feelings, then said, starting from the second he resigns. Months passed, it was seen that Will's father and friends were now successful with their respective jobs. Jillian had also gotten a new job. One afternoon, Will visited Lon's place to show him a new advertising video he had made. Will then took out his business card and said, "He's opening an advertising company now if you're interested. Lon can be his first client." Without thinking, Lon immediately agreed. Although his business was still in its infancy, this was what Will liked. For him, happiness was not when his job paid a lot of money, but when his job was his heart's choice, because if he chose it from the heart, then he could work wholeheartedly. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Amri Film channel so you don't miss the next movie recaps.